Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. My name is Cory, your 9th favorite board game YouTube reviewer on the internet. And today's video is all about the brand new board game published by Leader Games designer Cole Worley called ARCS. I did my very best to hold back posting this video to YouTube until I saw 8 other YouTube reviewers post their videos about ARCS, so then I could be the 9th one to follow suit with where the Talking Cardboard YouTube channel's respective place is in line. Pretty much this video is just a brief overview of the gameplay, because like I said, you've probably already seen other videos on how this game is played, but I will still do a quick overview of how the gameplay generally works, just by chance if this is your first video you are watching on the ARCS board game. That'll give you a good idea of how everything works, and then I'm just going to give my pros and cons to my first impressions of this game. I have gotten the game played 3 times now, once at 4 players, twice at 2 players, and I have added the Leaders and Lore expansion into one of the gameplays as well. So I've got a good mix and match of different ways to play the game under my belt to give you my best first impressions here in today's video. So I hope you all enjoy. Let's get started. So like I just mentioned, I would like to start with a brief overview of how the gameplay of ARCS works. I've got a 2-player game set up, yellow versus blue, and to begin the game, it is a variable setup. You have different back cards depending on the number of players. I will show it on the top-down camera here. 2-player, 3, and 4-player starting cards to show you basically which areas of the map are out of play. So based on this starting card, this is a 2-player card for the homelands scenario where this sector and this section are both out of play for the game. So if you are traveling from one side to the other, you skip right past that to the next gate. So it minimizes the overall area of the board depending on the player count. So that is the first thing you do here. Based on this starting setup card, some of the areas in this scenario, for example, are completely out of play, and then you can get rid of that card off to the side. And then also based on that card, it shows you where your starting ships, cities, and starports are located on the map here as well. So ARCS, the basic premise of this is you are trying to get victory points here at the bottom of the track to be the first one to get to the goal number of victory points. And in a 2-player game, the first player to get to 27 victory points triggers the end of the game. In a 3-player game, it's 30 points, and in a 4-player game, it's 33. So it's pretty much a race to the finish to try to trigger the end of the game, and whoever's left with the most points at that time is the winner. Either that, or at the end of the 5th chapter, there's different chapters to this game. After you play out a hand of cards, that is the end of a chapter. After you've done that 5 times, if there is no player that has reached the goal or the target number of victory points at that point, then whoever has the most victory points up to that point wins the game. So it is on a timer both ways. If you can't race to the finish or to the goal number of victory points, there is a timer with the amount of chapters that are played in the game as well. I will say, on average, a typical game of ARCS plays through maybe chapters 3 or 4 before somebody triggers the end of the game. We have not yet played a game through all 5 chapters. So maybe in your very first game, you'll play through all 5 chapters if nobody really knows exactly what they're doing or how to strategize or how to play the cards tactically to get that to that goal number of victory points. But typically around chapters 3 and 4 is when the game will end. So in a game of ARCS, how do you get victory points to try to get to that target goal on the victory point track? Well, at its basic, simplest form, it is card play to do actions, and it is a light element of trick-taking to achieve those card actions. There are 4 different suits in the game. You've got blue, gray, red, and yellow, and those different suits have actions shown on the side of the card to tell you what actions you can take with that suit of cards. And then, like I said, it has a light element of trick-taking as well, and I will explain how that is put into play right now. So in this setup, for example, I am the first player, so I would then choose to play the first card or the lead card on my turn. If I wanted to, let's say, play this 5 blue suit, for a mobilization. On a mobilization action, it says I can do one of two things. I can either move or influence. So there's two different actions I can do with this, and because I am the lead player, I get to do the maximum amount of pips that are shown on that card. So for this level 5 blue card, it has 2 of those star pips on it. So with the 2 star pips, I can do 2 actions for that card, and I can either choose move and or influence with those 2 pips. And I'll get into what those actions do here in a second, but basically I want to show how the flow of play works before I get into that. So after I then choose to carry out my actions, then my opponent over here can choose one of 3 things. It comes with a nice little player cheat sheet here. So going through that, they can choose to either surpass, pivot, or copy the action that I just played when it is their turn. So the first thing, surpassing, what does that mean? Well, to surpass an action, they would have to play the same color suit card after me with a higher power value. For example, here, this is a mobilization card, so it is the same suit, but it is a lower number, so they could not surpass or do a surpass action. If they, let's say, had a level 6 mobilization and they played that, 6 is higher than 5, so then they could carry out the surpass action. And what that means is because they played a higher, if they had played a higher value card of the same suit, they would then take first player and they would get to do all of the action pips on that card. Because they don't, they would not be able to do that, but that's just a common scenario that could happen. The other thing, because my opponent does not have a card to surpass my mobilization, is they can choose to either pivot or copy. If they really want to, let's get into pivot for a second. If they really wanted to take a different action that was not the same suit as the lead card, they could do that and play any other color card they want by pivoting, and they can do one of the actions on that card, but only one action on that card. They don't get, for example, on this construction card, this level 2 construction, it has 4 action pips on it, but because it is not the same suit as the lead card, they can only do one of those pips as their action. So that is the pivot action. You can pretty much do whatever you want with the cards you have, whether it is the lead action or not, but you can only do one action with that card. You cannot use all the pips. The last action you can do is, let's say you didn't have a card, or even if you did have a card of the same suit in your hand, but you wanted to keep a card hidden and maybe just do a copy action, you could place a card face down and use that action as a copy. And what that's doing is essentially the same thing as a pivot, but it is copying the same suit of the lead card for that action. So by playing a card face down, I can do one action of the mobilization action because that mobilization card was the lead card that was played. So then with that face down card copying, I could do one move or one influence respectively. So that is pretty much the flow of play. Another thing the first player can do playing the lead card on their turn is declare an ambition. And this is a really cool aspect of the game. And essentially what that's doing, and only the first player, only the player playing that lead card can choose to do this, but that's taking the ambition declared token and placing it on top of their card to make that level or the power of the card automatically a 0. But what that allows them to do is then choose the highest victory point total token that's left on the top of the ambition track here and choose one of the 5 different scoring goals that they wish to try to score for this round or this chapter. And like I said earlier, a chapter, it ends when everybody has played all the cards out of their hand or after everybody has passed and doesn't want to do anything else. That is the end of the chapter, and whichever spot they put this token on is what will score at the end of the chapter. What makes the declaring ambition action a little bit tricky though, and a little bit unique, is you can't just pick up the token and place it on any one of the 5 scoring goals that you want. You have to place it on the scoring goal that matches the icon in the bottom left-hand side of the card. So for example, this one is the keeper goal icon, so I would have to put this 5 victory point token onto the keeper action goal over there. And the different goals, the different scoring goals do different things, and they're very straightforward. But basically, like I said, the lead player can declare ambition, make their card value worth a 0, but then place the highest victory point total token that's left over onto whatever icon matches the bottom left hand side of their card. They could do that in a later round again if they had, let's say, this keeper icon on the bottom of another card and they were the first player, and they could declare ambition and put the next token on top of that same scoring goal if they wish to, and that would then increase the value in the number of victory points that goal is worth. The tokens are ranging from 5, 3 down to 2 victory points, and then the second place gets either 3 or 2, and then on that last token, second place gets 0 for that. So if you double up the scoring tokens on the same goal and you score that and take first place in scoring that, you get a total of 8 victory points out of the 27 that you're going for that round. And you can split them up too, like depending on the bottom left hand side of the card. Like I said, that first level, that first 5 victory point token would go on the keeper, but let's say in a subsequent turn, you know, I played this 2 administration as the lead card and declared ambition. It's got a little crate and like a gas or fuel barrel on there, and that is the tycoon scoring. So then I would take the next highest victory point token and place it on the tycoon for that scoring to happen at the end of that chapter. So that is a little bit how declaring ambition works and how the card play is in the game, generally speaking. Now quickly, before I get into what all the different card actions do, I'm just going to go over what the different scoring goals are. And so at the end of the chapter, all the different scoring goals that were placed out onto the board will end up scoring, and they are pretty straightforward, which I really appreciate in this game. The card play is very straightforward. The other players that are playing cards after the lead card is very straightforward. You can only do one of 3 things, either surpass, pivot, or copy, and then the scoring goals are very straightforward as well. So this first scoring goal here, if there was a scoring token on it, the tycoon, it's whoever has the most gas or crate symbols or tokens on their board, and you can do that through taxing and various things too. The tyrant is having the most captives on your board. The warlord is having the most trophies after destroying cities or starports or other players' ships. Having the most trophies on your board at the end of the chapter than you would score for this warlord token. The keeper is just having the most relic tokens or relic symbols on cards in front of you at the end of the round. And then empath is the same thing as the keeper, where you're just looking for those psionic tokens or those psionic symbols. Whoever's the most of those at the end of the chapter will score if there were a scoring token in the empath section of the scoring goals. So that is pretty much how that works. There are only 5 different things that you can score for, and it's either having the most tokens or resources and or having the most trophies or captives. So it's very, very simple and straightforward. And after playing a couple cards down and the flow of play starts to make more sense, then those scoring goals at the end of by the end of the first chapter make a lot of sense as well. So that is pretty much the overall gist of how to play cards, how to score points. But now let's get into what the different card actions actually do. So starting with mobilization. Mobilization, like I said, is move or influence. If you are the lead card, you get to utilize all the pips on the card, and or if you surpassed it with a higher card, if you were not the lead player, then you get to use all the pips as well. But for in this example, if I'm leading with a level 5 mobilization card, I've got 2 of those star pips on the card, so I can move and or influence up to 2 times. Move is very simple. It's picking up any number of ships from one spot and then moving them to an adjacent location. Or if you're picking up your ships from a starport location, you can catapult them as far as you can move or as far as you want to move them. And also you can drop off ships as you go, as you're moving as well, but your movement has to stop as soon as you run into any opponent's ships and or planets that are controlled by opponents. So in any cities, starports, or any opponent's ships, those will be a roadblock and force you to stop at that location. But if you're coming from that starport, that's really useful because you can slingshot or catapult from that location pretty much all the way across the map, unless somebody were blocking you or trying to kind of have a choke point to stop you sooner than where you would like to slingshot to or catapult to. So that is how movement works. Picking up these ships and moving them back here to the start spot. Now into influence is the other action on the mobilization card, and that's simply taking agents and using as many as you'd like based on the number of pips. Like let's say I wanted to use both of those 2 pips for influence. I could put them on these guild cards up top, these guild or vox cards, to try to have influence over those cards. I haven't gone over these cards quite yet, but basically what they do is they give you a little bit of a unique action that is unique to only you, and or a bonus that you get when or if you discard those cards. And also on the top of these cards, they give you symbols that might help you toward some of the scoring goals as well. In addition to taxing, which I'll get into later, taxing, you can tax for resources to store on your board. These cards also give you resource symbols that'll help toward scoring. So that is the influence action. Like I said, I could split up the pips as well. If I wanted to use one pip for mobilization to move, I could, let's say, move adjacent over there. And if I wanted to use the other pip to influence using one agent, I could put that on any one of these cards, for example, to have influence on that. And then there is another action you can do later called a secure action, which is the player who has the majority of agents on a card would then get to secure that card and bring it into their player tableau next to their player board. So that is mobilization, moving and influencing. The next card I'm going to go through here is administration. Administration is more of the gray color, the white color card, and that is allowing you to either tax, repair, or influence. And again, up to the number of pips that is available to you. And like I said, if you don't have an administration card and somebody led with an administration card, you could play a face down, any card from your hand face down next to it to copy that action, but then you would only get one action pip to use for that administration action. And basically what administration does, like I said, it's got three different options on it. Influence is the same thing that was on the mobilization card, but it does have that keyword on administration as well. So that would help you influence these cards all the same. The next thing on it is repair. So if you had a damaged ship on the board, you could use pips to repair ships, or one ship if you only had one pip, for example. And then the last thing is tax. So depending on the number of action pips you have to use, you can tax cities, whether it is your city or if you have control over an opponent's city, you can tax that planet for resources. So for example here, as you can see on the map, my 3 ships control my own city here. Nobody else has any more ships than me here, so I still have control over it. And as you can see here, this orange planet is a weapon planet. So if I taxed this city, I would get a weapon token resource that I could place on my board there. So that is administration, and now getting into aggression. So aggression, it's got the keywords secure, move, battle. Well, we already know what move does because that was on another card, simply moving your ships around the map. Secure, all that action allows you to do is if you have the majority of agents on a card, let's say for example, it looked like this and we were fighting over this card. Blue player had 1 agent on this card and the yellow player had 2 agents on the card. If I played this card, I could use the secure action to secure this, and the blue player's agent would become a captive of mine. I would get my 2 agents back, and then I would also secure the card, so then I have the special ability that is on this card. So that is what the secure action does. And the last action option on the aggression card is battle. And what that allows me to do is, like it says, is battle an opponent. So as long as I've got some ships on another location with an opponent, I can then use that battle keyword to trigger a battle. By simply moving into a location with opponent's pieces, that does not trigger a battle. The only way to trigger a battle is by playing an aggression card and using one of the action pips to trigger a battle using that action pip. And the way a battle works is very cool in this game. You've got 3 different colored dice to choose from, blue, red, and orange, and they all do different unique things. Blue is basically a very safe way to try to attack your opponent. It's a 50-50 chance. You have 3 of the sides of the dice with 1 hit. You have 3 of the sides that are blank, so it's either a hit or a miss, and you're not dealing any damage to yourself back. The red is more aggressive. This allows your opponent to actually deal some damage back to you, and it's a little bit more risky, but also with more risk comes more reward. You have more of a chance to hit your opponent for harder, more damage. And then the orange dice can only be rolled or only be chosen to be rolled if you are attacking ships that are within an opponent's structure. So either a city or a starport. So for example, here I have 2 ships. I can choose up to 2 dice that I would like to roll against the opponent here. So I'm going to try to be aggressive and choose a red. And then also I want to try to use a raid orange die because they have a building there. And let's roll them out and see what happens. So roll it out there. What's really cool in this player structure as well, you just read the combat from top to bottom on how to resolve a conflict, and it really helps out to know the order of operations with that. So the first thing here on the order of operations is it says hit your own ships. So for every flame on the die, I would hit my own ships. I've got 1 flame on the die, so that hurts one of my ships. All pieces and ships have, for example here, this structure as well, this starport, can take 2 hits before it blows up. So if a building is damaged, it flips over to the side that has the black on the corners of the triangle, or if it's in full health, you just flip it back to the side, or if it has been repaired, you flip it back to the side that has none of the black on the corners of the triangle, or if a ship gets damaged, you just lay it down, and if it then takes 1 more hit in a later round, then it would be destroyed and added to your opponent's trophy section on their player board. So first we resolved the fire, and now we resolve if any circles were rolled. There were no circles rolled here. That would be intercepting your ships, but if we had rolled one, for example, let's say this circle here, now this gives your opponent a chance to intercept your ships, and simply what that means is you count up the number of healthy ships that your opponent has, the undamaged ships, and you damage your own ships up to that many times. But intercepting ships can never blow up a ship, but they only damage ships. So for example here, my opponent has 3 healthy blue ships, and let's say I did roll that circle, they would intercept me, and the 3 ships would then damage up to 3 of my healthy ships. I only had 1 undamaged healthy ship, so then that would then damage that. So that's how intercepting ships works. And then you go into hitting ships. So for all of the pips, let's just turn this back to the original side that I had it on. All of the explosions on the dice, I then get to hit their ships back. So on this red die, it was high risk but high reward. I did roll 2 hits, so I could divide them out by doing 1 hit on 2 ships, or I could simply do both of the hits on the same ship to then blow it up and put it in my trophy section on my player board. So that is resolving hits. And then after that, we would resolve if any of the explosions had a triangle symbol in it, we would then get to damage buildings. And then at the final thing here, like I said, you could only roll the orange raid dice if there were buildings present, but the last thing we resolve are the key symbols on the card, and that is raiding cards and resources. So this is a really cool part of the game that I really appreciate, and basically what that's allowing you to do is spend those keys, the key symbol that you rolled on the dice, to steal opponents' things. So you can see that there are keys on top of everyone's player board, and the number of keys basically locks those items into place. So let's say, for example, my opponent had, let's say, 3 resources on their board. As you can see, as you build out more cities, you unlock more zones to hold more resources as well. But let's say something looked like that. On this roll here, I just rolled 1 key symbol. So looking at my opponent's player board, this token has 3 keys above it, this token has 1 key, and this token has 1 key. So I can spend that 1 key to either steal this relic or this fuel from my opponent, but the cost of 3 keys to steal this material, I cannot do that because I did not roll at least 3 keys. So let's say, for example, I had rolled 2 keys, I could steal both of these resources from my opponent, but because I only rolled 1 key, I can either choose to steal the fuel or the relic token, but not both. So let's say, for example, here, I would steal the relic, bring it over to my board, and then I've got that on my player board to use during future turns. So that is how combat works. Before going over the final card action here, I'm going to go over one more thing with card play. So like I said, whenever you play a card, you can either do one of 3 things. If you are the lead player, you do have to play the lead card here, but then your opponents have a chance to either surpass, pivot, or copy. But at any point, at any time after you lay down your card, you have an opportunity to do your Prelude action, and that is basically allowing you to do any Prelude actions on any of your cards in your tableau, and or spend these tokens, as many tokens as you would like, off your player board to do these Prelude actions. And those actions are really cool too, because it can boost a bunch of different ways to gain additional actions before you actually resolve the action pips on your action card played. As soon as you start spending any of the pips on the card played, you can't then go back and start spending tokens off of your board to do additional actions. You have to do it in that order. First, you play your card, then you can play any Prelude actions from tokens or cards in your tableau, and then you start spending action pips on the card played. Or for example, if you played a copy card face down, to copy the lead card to do 1 action pip, you'd have to spend as many of your Prelude tokens as you'd like before spending that 1 action pip to do your main action. So that is the order in which things are resolved with that. Going through what the different tokens do on your board during your Prelude action, these are really cool. So I'll just go in order from top to bottom. If I had a material on my player board like my opponent does, during your Prelude action, you can spend a material token to build or repair. So you could build a building or repair a ship even before you're doing your main actions on your turn. That is just a free action to do. The fuel allows you to take 1 move for every fuel spent. The weapon token that I've got here, nice and secure in my 3 key slot. By spending this weapon token, it allows me to take the battle keyword and apply it to any card that I had just played for my turn. So even if I had played this administration card that has the tax, repair, and influence actions on it, by spending this weapon token, it now adds the keyword battle to this action card. So now I've got 4 pips and 4 different options to do with those 4 pips opposed to just the 3 options. And it really allows you to get aggressive with battling and weaponizing your turn just by spending that token. The relic that I've got on my board here allows you to secure a card, which is really fun as well. If you have agents up here on these cards from previous turns, you can spend a relic to secure the card and then start to take your main action for the turn. So that's what relic does. And then these psionic tokens, if you spend a psionic token off of your board, it allows you to take an action on the lead card, whatever that lead card is. These tokens are really fun to play during the Prelude action before you place your action pips, and it just essentially gets you additional free actions before taking your turn. So that's a really fun aspect to the game as well. And then the last card I have not gone over yet is the last suit here. And that's more of this yellowish orange suit, and that is construction. On construction, the construction cards, it says you can build or repair. So pretty simple. Building is wherever you have a starport, for every starport you have, you can build 1 ship. You can't build more than 1 ship using the same starport, so you'd have to have multiple starports on the map to build 1 ship at every starport by spending 1 action pip per ship that you build, and or you can build new cities or new starports wherever you have control, on whatever planets you have control. So that is what the build allows you to do. And then repair, we've already gone over that before. That is just standing up ships that were damaged or flipping over starports or cities that had been damaged to repair those back to full health. So that is pretty much a brief overview, a light, quick overview of the base game. Like I said, it's not all the rules and not all the logistics or everything involved, but it gives you a general nice idea of how the gameplay works in the base game. And then with these leaders and lore cards here, you can add those in future games as you become more familiar and comfortable with just the generic vanilla base game. You can each draft a leader and a lore that goes with your leader faction that gives you and each of your opponents an asymmetric ability on your leader and an asymmetric ability on your lore card to keep things fresh and throw in some unique asymmetric abilities for each player. So that is really fun to add as well after you've played the game a couple times. Okay, and now as promised in the intro to this video, some of my first impressions of ARCS. Now, having said that, we will do a full review video with the full Talking Cardboard crew at a later date, but I at least wanted to get this video out there to give my initial thoughts and impressions on the game after playing it 3 times, and then as we play it more, maybe 6, 7, 8 times as a group, then we'll bring the whole team back to the table and give some final thoughts and ratings on the game as well. But first impressions, let's start with the pros. All right, and my first pro is that for ARCS being such a dense and tactical, crunchy game, it is fairly easy to teach, and I really appreciate that. Teaching the game is a breeze. You just throw down a card, you explain what the different actions do, you explain the 3 different options that your opponents have to surpass or copy or pivot on a card action that they wish to do, and then you quickly explain the goals and what some of the asymmetric cards do. If you are playing with some of the leaders, you know, that'll throw a little bit into it, but pretty much at the heart of it, everything is easy to understand after playing through a couple cards, and as you get the flow of gameplay down, it really starts to click in a hurry. I would say your first couple cards, you're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on and what you can and can't do and what certain things mean. But after playing down a couple turns, everybody starts to get it and things start to click, and it becomes pretty intuitive after that. And this is definitely a game, getting into my next pro here, ARCS is definitely a game that will evolve and develop and get better and better gameplay wise with the more times you play it. So yes, it's easy to teach, it's fairly simple to explain and to understand after playing a couple turns, but with more subsequent plays, then it really starts to click strategy-wise, tactical gameplay-wise. It takes a while to really grasp the overall breadth of this game, and yes, it is dense. Yes, the tactical gameplay is pretty crunchy and complex. This game definitely grows and evolves over time with each gameplay. It just gets better and better. And getting into the next set of pros here, the actions are very intuitive. Like I had already mentioned, the keywords on all the cards make a lot of sense after you just explain it one time. Everybody understands what that means. The other set of pros here that I've got is the scoring ambitions is a ton of fun. This is really cool. The variable scoring, the unique way that things score, the fact that you can declare ambition and that really hinders your card play, making your card power level a 0, so then other players can easily surpass that and become the next start player very easily and to get to do their full amount of action pips on their card very easily, but then you are the one deciding where these victory point tokens are going on whichever goal that maybe suits you and hopefully suits you best. You know, there are 5 different goals to go through. Each of the goals are very simple to understand, but as the game kind of develops and you're maneuvering and you're trying to outwit your opponents and really get your pieces in the correct locations for your plan of action, then declaring that ambition is a lot of fun to then place a scoring tile on whatever action or whatever scoring goal you have been building toward the whole time. And what's also really cool about that is more than one scoring tile can be placed on the same goal. So some of those goals during a chapter, just during one single chapter, can really rack up in the amount of points that you get for taking first or second place in it. So if you do manage to take first place in a goal that might have all 3 victory point tiles on it, then you just score a ton of points. And that is a lot of fun to just have a huge couple of turns during a chapter to score a ton of victory points. One thing real quickly that I forgot to mention during the brief overview is that if any of the victory point tiles are not spoken for during the round, they actually flip to become a greater amount of victory points. So as the game progresses during each chapter, the victory points are also progressing as well and becoming worth more and more to continue moving the gameplay forward, so then it doesn't overstay its welcome. So I really appreciate the scoring system in ARCS. And the last pro I've got for this initial impressions is that it plays really well at all player counts. I've had a ton of fun at both 2-player and 4-player, and I think I would have just as much fun at a 3-player count as well. Each time you play, it's got the variable setup based on the player count, so it sections off different parts of the board that you can and can't play on, and that really tightens up the board to keep everything competitive and close-knit in tight quarters, so there's a lot of points of contention throughout the entire game. It's a very tense game, very cool combat, very cool war style game, and keeps everything variable, but at the same time everybody in tight close quarters throughout the entire game, so everything it adds just that layer of tension every time you play the game. Now getting into a couple of the potential cons to this game that I've seen after a few plays, and the first thing I'm starting with again was one of my pros, having the variable scoring and the way that the different scoring tiles are placed on these scoring goals. That is a pro for me, but also I could see for some players it being a con where, you know, if somebody just gets that lucky hand of cards and has everything that works for them toward a specific goal, they can get a ton of points in one chapter just by pretty much the luck of the draw. And I know it is a trick-taking game, so if you are playing it logically, and you are good at trick-taking games and trying to keep cards in hand that are going to work for you at the opportune moments, you can then, you're supposed to be able to then take first player token every once in a while to get that ambition declared. That'll work for you. But if for some reason, just by happenstance, they are able to get, multiple scoring tiles on the same goal, or multiple ambition tiles on the same scoring goal, and they end up taking first place in that is just a ton of points. And then one thing I didn't go over in the overview as well, but as you add more and more cities to the board, if you get your full complements of cities out onto the board, you also get bonus victory points for taking first place as well. So up to 5 additional bonus victory points for taking first place. So for example, if you scored first on one that had all 3 of these scoring tiles on it, it would be 4, 5, and 3 for a total of 12 plus 5. You could get up to, just for this example, 17 victory points with one chapter, and that is over half of the amount of points you need in a 2-player game. So it can be a little bit swingy with the victory points if you're not being careful, and if you are playing with some players that are a little bit newer to trick-taking games in general, that could pose an issue with players just overtaking the game and overrunning it and getting the scoring tiles onto the ambitions that are needed for them, and then that can really propel exponentially with the amount of victory points they get, just by not only sheer luck and happenstance by the cards that they are dealt to at the beginning of the round, but also if they've played the game more times than their opponents, they might understand that nuance to the game a little bit better than they understand it. So I could see that being a little bit of an issue, a little bit of a con for ARCS. The last con I could see is really not a con for me at all, but it could be a con for others, is the rolling of the dice. Anytime you are rolling dice in a game, you could roll a bunch of blanks and just be, completely unlucky with your roll. Let's say you roll this, for example. You got a couple of flames that'll damage your ships, and they're intercepting your ships and boarding them to do some damage. And on your safe dice, you roll 2 blanks, and then, you're left with 2 keys, but they don't have any resources on their board for you to steal, for example. And, that unlucky roll can really kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth. But the dice are actually another pro that I really like in the game, are the way these dice work, and the fact that the attacking player is the only player deciding on which dice they choose, and just kind of coming down to how risky do you want to be with that is really fun for me, but also I can see how it could be very frustrating and a con for others who don't enjoy the luck of the die roll as much. And it could be very frustrating, especially if it's a very pivotal moment in the game where you need a specific die roll to steal a resource that you need to score an ambition, or need to take out one more ship of an opponent to get another trophy to take over an ambition, and all that can come down to the die roll and the luck of the die, and that can definitely lead to some frustrating moments. But other than that, that's pretty much all I have today for ARCS. Just a brief overview of how the game plays, some pros, a couple minor cons that could be cons for players, but my initial overall impression so far is I am extremely happy with this game and extremely happy that I purchased it for my collection. This game is just fantastic, very tense every time we play it. The card play is very smooth, the actions are very intuitive, the variable scoring goals and how the declaring ambition works and how that is just very tense every time you play with your decisions on when to declare an ambition or who's going to declare what ambition, and trying to position yourself accordingly on the board to then have your best opportunity at scoring those are so cool. And then the different guild cards and the Vox cards and how you are trying to influence those to gain additional actions and abilities that are just unique to you. And then throwing in the leaders and lore packs as well just adds another variable component to the game and just some flair and kind of the cherry on top, and can make every game just completely asymmetric and feel unique. The variable setup, everything about this game I just adore and really love the heck out of it. We, the Talking Cardboard group, also just recently picked up this big ARCS the Blighted Reach expansion, which adds an entire campaign into the game as well. It is definitely a bigger box, large campaign of a game, but what I've read on this Blighted Reach campaign sounds very cool and very interesting, and it's still in shrink wrap, so we haven't gotten it to the table yet, but I'm very excited to crack this box open and give it a try, because from what I've read, it sounds very interesting. Just a quick brief overview of what this expansion expansion does. It's called a campaign, but it is marketed as a mini campaign where every time you play, it's a mini trilogy of gameplay. So you are playing through 3 games of ARCS in one sitting, and each time you play, some different lore and storyline and different leaders or different factions, different gameplay changes happen between each game, and each game of ARCS plays in 2 hours or less. So theoretically, you could play a full trilogy campaign of the 3 games in only maybe 5-6 hours, maybe a little over 6 hours at the most, and have just one big epic trilogy of a gameplay. And every time you play as well, the campaign or the mini campaign is variable. So every time you play this mini campaign, it is a different campaign and a different feel, different branches of storyline and different arcs of storyline every time you play. So this adds a whole nother level of variability and uniqueness to the gameplay that hopefully will keep it fresh, and one that I'm just excited to get to the table and give it a shot. But honestly, even if this big box campaign did not exist, I'm still extremely happy with the base game, or just adding in some more leaders and lore with the little leaders and lore expansion that I got as well. This base game itself is variable enough and fun every time and unique enough that each gameplay feels differently just within the base game itself. But if you've played this game, 20, 30 times and you're looking for more of an epic feel, more of an epic space game feel that has a unique variable mini campaign every time you play it, then this, I think, is going to be the ticket for you, and I'm hoping it's the ticket for my game group as well. As we get more of this game played, it'll keep it fresh, but I could definitely see us bringing the base game of ARCS back to the table for multiple plays. If we're not feeling more of a 5 or 6 hour game, if we want to just sit down for a quick 1.5 hours play of ARCS, I think this game will stay fresh for many more plays. So that is my initial impressions. Like I said, stay tuned for a future video here soon with the full complement of Talking Cardboard members, where we give our overall final impressions and review of the game, and then also our final rating on how we enjoy this game and where it might fall within our top favorite games of all time. So stay tuned for that video, and until next time, you all have a great day and have fun gaming.